Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolence. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's this American white man. And they have proved it throughout the country by the police dogs and the police clubs. 100 years ago, they used to put on a white sheet and use a bloodhound against Negroes. Today, they've taken off the white sheet and put on police uniforms. They've traded in the bloodhounds for police dogs, and they're still doing the same thing. And just as Uncle Tom, back during slavery, used to keep the Negroes from resisting the bloodhound or resisting the Ku Klux Klan by teaching them to love their enemy or pray for those who use them despitefully. Today, Martin Luther King is just a 20th century or modern Uncle Tom or a religious Uncle Tom who is doing the same thing today to keep Negroes defenseless. And Dr. Martin Luther King is to give Negroes a chance to sit in a segregated restaurant beside the same white man who had brutalized them for 400 years. The goal of Dr. Martin Luther King is to get Negroes to forgive the people who have brutalized them for 400 years by lulling them to sleep and making them forgetting what those whites have done to them. But the masses of black people in America today don't go for what Martin LutherKing is putting down. As you said in one of your articles, is psychologically insecure or something of that sort. I forget how you put it. But you didn't endorse what Martin Luther King was doing yourself.
I do not reject his goals of full integration and full equality rights for American citizens. Do you reject these goals?
If you don't think that he's walking on the right road, I'm quite sure you don't agree that he'll get to the right place.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's the Political Brown Kid here. And I'm finally getting around after years. And when I say years, I honestly mean years of actually thinking about, even before I started the channel, I wanted to put something out there on Martin Luther King. And I know I've been talking about it for a lot on the channel. I've been procrastinating with doing it because it just may be a long video. I'm trying to keep it short, but you really can't. But I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, and I'll elaborate if you have comments and you want to pose those comments to me. But I'm going to start this video off by saying this. First and foremost is that just because I critique someone doesn't mean I dislike or hate someone. Because I think a lot of people, because I critiqued Dave Chappelle, and I had so many people come in and talk about that's because you hate Dave Chappelle. I don't know why they're defending a comedian that likes to do black jokes and use the N-word excessively, but he won't use the F word. He won't use the F word for gay people. He won't use the K word or the H word for Jewish people, but he can degrade his own people, make coonish jokes. And then when he finally realizes after 2 years of having a show that people, 2.5 years of people were not laughing at him or laughing with him, but at him, he flees because now he finally gets it. But this is what happens with a lot of black people. So I'm prefacing this by stating I don't hate Martin Luther King. I just think that his movement should never have gotten lifted up off the ground. And that's just being honest. Martin Luther King, the one thing that black people have to ask themselves, this is the one question you would have to ask yourself. And I'm going to pose this scenario to y'all right up front. If you were in a fight, or let's just say if you lived in something's going on in your life and you have somebody that you just don't like, you have an antagonist, you have somebody that just purely hates you, this person doesn't like you, for whatever reason, y'all have had a long-standing feud, longer than the Hatfields and McCoys, longer than the Bloods and Crips. And this person basically tells you, oh man, I really think you need to shop at this store over here as opposed to this store over here. We're endorsing this store. We really think this store's for you and not this other store. Or they recommending whatever product. Why would you listen to your enemy? Why would you listen to an endorsement from your enemy? So when white people endorse Martin Luther King over Malcolm X, black people your dog whistle should have gone up right then immediately. You should have said, well, why do y'all like Martin Luther King so much and not Malcolm X? Why are you trying to get me to follow this dude right here and not this dude over here? You're going to that should have been your first telltale sign that the guy that you're following is not the guy that you should be following. And I'm just going to say that up front. And also, I'm going to say this up front too. And I'm not trying to say I'm malicious, but this is the truth. I know a lot of people, guys. When I talk in this particular language, I think guys understand it because, we're not as, wrapped up in our feelings as women are. And that's not a shot at women. It's just saying I typically get this pushback when I make certain comments. Like when somebody passes away, I'm not crying and all falling on the floor and hugging people and doing all that stuff. I just say, man, if you want to talk about it, talk about it. But people take that, and normally I get it from females, is me not having a heart when I actually do. But if I'm not that close to the person, I don't have a need to be falling out and passing out and doing all this other stuff. But what I'm going to say is this, that may sound harsh, is that probably one of, in the grand, not in terms of Martin Luther King himself, because I'm pretty sure that man would love to be alive to this day to see, we all like to take as much breaths as we can, live as long as you can, so long as you're in good health and your quality of life is good. But as far as for his movement, I'm specifically for his movement. The best thing that ever happened for his movement was for him to die. And that is just the honest to God truth. The United States, like I told y'all before, one of the mistakes that the United States used to make, but they've corrected this mistake, is they no longer make martyrs. See, they made a martyr out of Medgar Evers. They made a martyr out of Malcolm X. They made a martyr out of Martin Luther King. They're stopping that because all they did was deify these individuals. You look today, these individuals are almost deified. To be honest with you, their legacy lives on. So now when you see the United States deal with their opposition, or as you young people say, ops, which I think is so stupid, but I mean, that's the language that you speak. You'll see them set up a negative, they do the smear campaign first. They do a smear campaign to paint this person as an evil, vicious person that needs to be taken out, and then they take that person out. That's what they do, because you can't let them live on as a martyr. You have to get rid of them. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because of this. It's going to come up when I start talking about him in comparison to Jesse Jackson. So I'm setting that up. The way that black people treat Martin Luther King because of his death, because you can't say nothing bad about dead people. I don't know why people feel that way. If they had some wrongs in their life, you should be able to talk about them. But once a person dies, it seems like the only thing you can talk about is fantastical things. But because Jesse Jackson is still alive, it's okay for y'all to kick that man, to beat that man down, and basically disregard anything he's done because y'all new black savior, Barack Hussein Obama, came along. And so we'll talk about that, and I'll jump back into that. But here's a quick backstory people don't know. Harry Belafonte, Martin Luther King, Sidney Poitier, all of those guys running around in similar circles. But Harry Belafonte did an article. This was about 4 years ago when I first read this, because I didn't even really know the story. I knew that Harry Belafonte and Martin Luther King were close, or they were friends, but I didn't know how close. And then I didn't know this little tidbit that I read in this article that I read 4 years ago, which made me say, I want to do something on Martin Luther King and start a channel. And never did it until now. But Harry Belafonte basically said that Martin Luther King's first love was a white woman. That was his first true love. You can look this up. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's true, but not, I'm just the messenger. I'm repeating what I read in a magazine. Don't even remember what the magazine was. But Harry Belafonte said Martin Luther King was madly in love with a white woman. And him and that white woman had good times together. But apparently her father didn't approve of the relationship, I do believe. Her father didn't approve of the relationship, so she cut it off with him. But then I think I read somewhere else that he cut it off with her because I guess he was starting up this movement and he couldn't be attached with a white woman. So I don't know, pick your side. But from what I read from Harry Belafonte, she broke it off with him because she, because I guess her parents and, I guess the relationship. And they said Martin Luther King was so distraught and so heartbroken about that he went and started the whole movement. And so if you think about it, look, it makes sense. If you think about that thing, that makes sense. You look at Harry Belafonte, Martin Luther King, who married Coretta Scott King, by the way, who can pass the brown paper bag and the cone test. So that's just another little thing you could think about when you think about Martin Luther King. He went and got him a little, He went and got him a little, hossidity little girl. And you think about Sidney Poitier. I think Harry Belafonte had a white woman. I do believe. I don't look. I could be wrong on that one, but I could swore that Harry Belafonte had a white girl. We know Sidney Poitier had a white woman because he got that little daughter, Sidney Poitier, running around. And she don't even think she black. She got her a white man. Last time I checked, it's like they started the civil rights movement just so they could marry white women. If you look at everybody entangled with that civil rights movement back in them days, they all had white women. Unbelievable with these Negroes. I can't make this stuff up. But that's what I'm not trying to say that that's where he got the whole idea for the civil rights movement, but hey, you're dating white women. It's unbelievable. But the problem that I have with Martin Luther King was you're starting a movement of nonviolence in an era of violence. Once again, I keep telling y'all, racism is not black people's problem. Racism has never been black people's problem. If you've never heard anything else that I've said, imbue this into your brain. Racism has never been your problem. That's the white man's problem. He hates your skin. He hates your lips. He hates your nose. He hates your hair. He hates you for whatever it is that you are. He hated you so much, they had to empty swimming pools after you got into them. You had to drink from a different water fountain. That's how much they hated you. And they still do to this day. But they hate you that much, so racism is their issue. You don't have a problem with racism. Black people, if you look at black people, it's the polar opposite. You love white people too much. That's your problem. You fantasize and you have put the white man up on a pedestal and the white woman. That's your problem. The black people's problem has always been a lack of power. And the Black Panthers tried to show y'all that, and Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam tried to show y'all that, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad tried to show y'all that. Farrakhan's still trying to show y'all that. Black people can't grasp that. You have a lack of power, political power. You have no power with the media. You have no military power. You have no financial power. You don't have power. That is your whole issue. You don't even see North Korea having a problem with power. They have a nuclear weapon, and you don't see America trying to have any of that smoke because and they're not the richest country in the world, not by far. But they isolate themselves, but they don't have those type of problems. They keep to themselves. You look at China. You look at even the immigrants that come here. Not to say that they have power, but they don't idolize the white man. They live in their own communities. You see Asians have their own, they have a Chinatown everywhere you go, and they circulate their dollars within their own community. Hispanics do the same thing. Black people are the only people that lack power. And we lack, and of course the media, we have media, but we don't use the media to our benefit. And that's where Martin Luther King goes off the rails, right off the break, the foundation of his movement. Even when you look at Nelson Mandela's I would probably consider him the purest form of all of those, because Nelson Mandela even said by any means necessary. He adopted, him and the Nation of Islam were pretty much aligned, because before Nelson Mandela became the older, calmer gentleman that you see today, Nelson Mandela was saying, hey, look, we got to blow this tower up right here. We got to do this. We got to do that. Nelson Mandela was setting it off. And that's why when you look at Ronald Reagan and all of them, they called him a terrorist. But he's not a terrorist. He's doing whatever it is he needs to do. He was a revolutionary to say, we need to get our country back because we have been colonized. And they fought against apartheid using whatever means they could use. And then once apartheid was kicked out, then Nelson Mandela switched over and said, well, now we don't need to do those type of actions now. Now we can run a government as any other person without using those particular tactics. And that's where Martin Luther King goes off the rails, because when you start clutching a Bible from a God that white people basically created, Jesus Christ, because his name was never Jesus. We all know that. The book, that you read from and the religion that you have adopted is sketchy at best, and you want to adopt this religion, and I'm talking about Martin Luther King being a Christian, and you want to uphold these Christian values against other quote unquote white Christians that ain't even upholding those values. Their values are sick dogs on you, use fire hoses on you, lynch you, do whatever it is we need to do, use our police presence to lock you up and do whatever it is we need to do to you all. So that's the big problem that I have with Martin Luther King, is that you're preaching nonviolence, and nonviolence got you nowhere. It got you somewhere with white people because white people want you to be nonviolent. You look at white people's movement because they don't want you to take action against them. They were your oppressors. So why would they say, yeah, go ahead, it's okay for you to beat us and do actions back to us? They're not going to do that. Why do you think when you look at, and I keep talking about this, when you do a comparison between black people's actions and Jewish people's actions, white people always encourage black people. Yeah, just forgive, yeah, forgiveness. Why do you think the slave masters they wouldn't allow you to read, write? You couldn't do anything but work and study the Bible. And the only thing they taught you about the Bible was forgiveness, because they wanted to keep you docile and subservient to them. So I'm saying that to say this: when you look at black people today, the white people, all they want you to do is forgive them, do whatever it is, let's be nice, play nice, have a forgiving heart. And they encourage this from black people. You look at a Jewish person, if a Jewish person is walking down the street right now and they saw a 140-year-old Nazi person, and this person, mind you, this Nazi may have just been, hey, look, just like we have military people that join the military and they don't really want to fight in a war. They're not totally with what's going on, but it's their job. This Nazi may have just been working at the front desk. He may have just been an admin assistant. I'm not making excuses for the person, but I'm just putting this in context. And if they see a Nazi person right now walking down the street, and this person's 140 years old, you know what they're doing? They're calling up the war crimes or whatever it is. I don't know, but there's like a war crimes division. They're calling a Holocaust. Well, they're calling some division up to say, hey, I saw so and so and so and so who used to work in the Nazi concentration camp or used to be in the Gestapo unit or wherever they were with, and this person needs to be prosecuted. And the person's 140 years old. And you know what? Everybody will back them, and everybody will applaud a Jewish person for taking those actions to send a 140-year-old person to jail and to hell. But then yet, if a black person tries to do that with Emmett Till's accuser or any other accuser that they had, then we're being vindictive and they want us to let it go. And this is the same thing that Martin Luther King is doing. And I don't want to hear people put in the comment section, well, Martin Luther King was gonna change. You know what? That's that old Keith Sweat line. I'm gonna. You can say I'm gonna all day long. I'm going off of what you have done. And if it took you too long to get to that point, then that's your fault. It is your fault. So I don't want to hear what Martin Luther King was going to do. Let's talk about what he did to set black people back 500 years for the most part. You're preaching nonviolence. Then you want to have a march on Washington. And in that march on Washington, you got a bunch of white women calling you up talking about, well, we having a problem with feminism. The white man, they don't respect us either. They won't allow us to burn bras and have unprotected, encounters with men and get, and take the Plan B pill in the 1960s or 70s, whenever the march on Washington occurred. And then Martin Luther King said, sure, come along. And now the movement has gone from being about a black issue to focus on black people to now we want to focus on taking care of these white women. And I don't know if he has sympathy for these white women because he used to be in love with a white woman. But you got sympathy for them. They don't need your sympathy. The white woman, next to the white man, the white woman, when you look at the hierarchy, the pecking order of life, it is the white man, then the white woman. She's up there, but she'll play the victim card whenever she wants to get what she wants. When has the white woman ever did anything for you, black people? And this goes for you black women too. They don't do much. I don't hear they getting their pay. Katniss Everdeen starred in 4 movies and made $20 million, and you still got Taraji out here crying and complaining. Yeah, them white women ain't helping Taraji out, and they don't care that Taraji's math ain't math, and they only care that their math ain't mathing. And this is the honest to goodness truth. Martin Luther King let his movement get diluted in not his, basically our interests. He let the interests get diluted. Here it is too. And so when they had the March on Washington, it became about disabled people, black people, crippled people, white women. It just became a hodgepodge of everything. And then even talking with just sticking with the March on Washington while it's fresh on my brain, then he gives white people a soundbite. Martin Luther King's March on Washington, and I don't have the full speech in front of me. I do not. But when you listen, I encourage people to read. Don't just listen to his speech. Go and read. You can read his speech on the March on Washington. It's online. If you read his speech on the March on Washington, he basically talked about the evils that Americans, particularly white people, were doing against black people. He spent a good amount of time talking about how white people are not right. But you know what he did? The one mistake that he did, he gave them a soundbite because he wrapped up the speech with optimism. And the soundbite that he's giving white people that they use to this day is, I have a dream that one day little black boys and little black girls can hold hands with little white boys and little white girls, and they can play, and you can be judged off the content of your character and all this other stuff. And he just gave a soundbite. And the evilness with white people, this goes to show you how evil white people are. They only cherry pick what they want to hear. They have convenient amnesia. And they disregarded the first 50 minutes of his speech and just they plucked away the last 2 minutes, and that's all you hear them talk about. Sanjay Gupta, that's all you hear about that loser. That's all you hear him talk about. He was just on racist Bill Maher's television show, and he even mentioned Martin Luther King's speech. And they don't talk about the first 50 minutes. But Martin Luther King, unfortunately, he gave him a soundbite. The other problem I have with Martin Luther King is I keep forgetting that girl's name. Now, once again, we all know about not Coretta Scott King, but Rosa Parks. Everybody wants to give Rosa Parks credit for sitting down on a bus. And I get it. I mean, she took a bold stance, but it was a contrived event. This is what people fail to understand. The whole event wasn't that she got on this bus and she was really tired. I mean, maybe she was tired. I don't know. But she got on the bus. Once again, listen. Rosa Parks looks just like Coretta Scott King. Well, I shouldn't say looks just like, but they're similar. They're similar in color and they're similar in hair texture. And once again, both of them can pass the brown paper bag test and they both could pass the comb test. And we know that was the margin of standard for the black elite back in the early 1940s, 50s, 60s. You can go to any HBCU yearbook of those time periods, and you will not see too many dark faces on those campuses. They were all light brights. That is God's honest truth. But what happened was, and everybody knows the story by now, it was a young black female. She was brown skinned. She could not pass the brown paper bag test. She could not pass the comb test. And this is a fact. I forget her name. I think her name began with a C. I talked about that girl in one of my previous videos, so y'all may have to just watch all my videos, please. But that young girl, she was legitimately tired. And I don't know if she had her baby with her on the bus that day, but the problems that she had was that she was brown skinned. She had black hair, your typical black person's hair. And she was a young, I think she was about 16 years old at the time, 16 or 17. And she was a single mother. And the girl was legitimately tired, sat down on the bus, and she got arrested. And Martin Luther King and them didn't come to her aid. They didn't even talk. I don't even think they talked. Well, I wasn't there, so I didn't watch the news, but I would be surprised if they even mentioned that girl and tried to help that girl out. Maybe they helped her out behind the scenes, but she didn't get the recognition that she should got. She should have been the one laying up in the rotunda when she passed. Maybe she's still alive, but if she passed away, she should have been the one laid up in the rotunda and not Rosa Parks because she didn't get any recognition. She went straight to jail. Do not collect gold, just go straight to jail. And so then Martin Luther King and them came back and they used her situation to contrive an event to have Rosa Parks sit down on a bus, because I think it wasn't Rosa Parks, the secretary of the, I don't know, NAACP or SNCC or one of them organizations, and they had her sit down on the bus because she's light skinned, good hair, considered a pretty girl, probably, and then they sat her down on the bus. I don't know what she looked like back in those days. I haven't seen a picture of Rosa when she was young. And they had her sit down on the bus. And thus the movement began for Rosa Parks. Or the legend of Rosa Parks began and the movement continued from Rosa Parks. So that's the other issue that I had, that they didn't back that young black girl, but they were willing to back Rosa Parks, or willing to create an event for Rosa Parks to get the recognition off of. I'm going to kind of circle in too I'm going to try to be delicate when I talk about this, because I really don't want to give white people a soundbite. I really don't. But it has to be mentioned because I brought up Jesse Jackson for a particular reason. And I brought up Martin Luther King being a martyr and it being good that he was a martyr for a reason. Because we all know old gay boy from the FBI, I forgot his name, had Martin Luther King's phones tapped and everything. And I'm saying gay boy because he really was gay. The head of the FBI, I forget his name at the time. He's not even worth mentioning. His name isn't even worth mentioning off my tongue. But he, we all heard about the alleged things that Martin Luther King was involved in. If you don't know, I'm not going to mention them here because I'm not going to give those white people the satisfaction of mentioning it. But Martin Luther King there's some accusations that have been kind of bad in regards to things that he has been involved in with women. And well, I'm gonna say one thing, because one thing is obvious. Well, he did have a mistress, and he had a white mistress. So again, Martin Luther King couldn't stay away from these white women. I almost forgot about this one. He had a white mistress. It probably was the woman that he dumped, or that dumped him, and he was using her as a little sneaky link. I have no idea. But he had a white mistress, and then he was also involved in some other serious accusations of some parties, some group things going on that he knew about and even, I think, participated in, and or he watched some people get taken advantage of. Now, if people have got mad and they have thrown Jesse Jackson to the side over a baby that he had out of wedlock, that he had, I don't know if I think he was married at the time. He had infidelity and out of wedlock. He created this baby with this woman. And all you hear people talk about, and now that Jesse has done that, Jesse has been they've had placed Jesse Jackson in Outer Mongolia. You have never heard Jesse Jackson's name. The only time you hear Jesse Jackson's name again is when Jesse passes away. And then once he passes away, then all will be forgiven because, like I told y'all, no one talks bad about the dead. But while Jesse is alive, black people have been beating him up. And the main reason for all you young people who don't know why Jesse first got beat up was because Barack Hussein Obama, the black savior who never was, but I'm not going to talk about Barack in this video, but the black savior who never was, when everybody saw that he was could have a possible chance of getting elected, apparently Jesse Jackson had a mic on and his microphone was hot, had a hot mic on. And Jesse Jackson basically said, talking bad about Barack Obama, basically said the Joker had no nuts, no gonads. Something like that, to that effect. Something to that effect, and I'm paraphrasing. And when Jesse said that, black people turned on him so fast. I'm not lying. I was there. I was a little younger. Yeah, I was in my 20s, 30s? Yeah, 20s. I was in my 20s. And Jesse They turned on Jesse Jackson so bad and so fast. As a matter of fact, when I think when Barack won either the election or the nomination, it was one of them. You could see old wicked Oprah. She's the devil. I keep telling y'all about Oprah. So you can see old wicked Oprah Winfrey. She made her way to the front row. She was kind of like in the first few front rows, and she was looking up at Barack. And then all the way in the back was Jesse Jackson, and he was just kind of taking in the moment. And he was crying. He had the tears flowing down. He had his hand over his mouth, but you could tell that he was overwhelmed and touched, even though he said what he said about Barack. And listen, we say things about people, but it doesn't mean that we hate people. It's just sometimes you just have certain opinions about certain people's characters, but it doesn't mean that you hate the person as a whole. But you could tell he was obviously overcome with joy and emotion to seeing this black man get the nomination or win the presidency. But people treated Jesse like, and ever since then, you've never seen Jesse Jackson. And then when that baby came out, you really didn't see Jesse. And Jesse caught hell. But they don't give Martin Luther King the same hell. And I'm just confused by that. Jesse Jackson has done so much. I mean, he worked with Dr. King, I do believe. And Jesse has done so much for black people. Jesse, he did more for not even just black people. When them people was it over in the Middle East, when them hostages, when Jesse got aboard a plane and said, I'm going to get these hostages and get them freed. Jesse got on the plane, and just like Sin K from the movie, I forget the name of that movie, Amistad, he went over there and gave them people freedom. He went over and negotiated the terrorists, let them people go. I don't make this up. Jesse ran for president in 1980. Shirley Chisholm ran first. I think she ran in the 70s or 60s. I don't know. I wasn't around on that time. And Jesse ran in the 80s. I don't remember too much about him running. I just seen older clips because I was young then. But I've seen clips with Jesse running. But Jesse catches hell. And Martin Luther King does not catch the same hell, and he's not held accountable for his actions. On anything, he gets a pass because he's dead. Because he's dead, he gets a pass. So I don't make this stuff up. Man, I tell you guys. The other thing that really bothered me about the whole Martin Luther King thing, and this goes even to this day, is that he distanced himself from the most part from Malcolm X. Number one, because of the nonviolence thing. That was one of the things that he distanced himself from because of difference of philosophical opinion. But it was really the religion that really divided him from and made him standoffish towards Malcolm I'm talking about the earlier times. This is the one thing I say about Christians, man. Christians are the most judgmental people on planet Earth. You can't say anything wrong about God or Christianity, even though but yet they can be so mean to people that they see, touch, and hear every day. But a God that's just floating around in the world that hasn't proven himself to be real as of yet, he gets all of the passes in the word. You can't say anything negative about God. And not even just that, but it's just you can't even look at or worship a different religion without somebody wanting to be standoffish from you. And that's the way Martin Luther King treated Malcolm X in the beginning. And the reason why I bring that up is because that's very important, because when you fast forward to, what was that, 1996, and I was actually a young guy during that time. It was 1995 or 94. When was that? It was like 90, it could have been 96. I think it was 95 or 94. Because I was a young guy during that time, very young. But when they had the march, when the Honorable Louis Farrakhan organized the Million Man March, you saw something similar happen with present day Christians, because they didn't conceive or even have the foresight to think of mobilizing people, black people, to come together on the mall and have that particular type of moment. And because it was being spearheaded by Louis Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam, a lot of black preachers did not endorse the Million Man March, and a lot of them stayed away. I don't know what their parishioners did. I'm not talking about the parishioners. I'm talking about the church leaders. And this is a fact because I've gone back. Like I said, I was a young guy during the time. I was down there with my father during that time, and I've revisited that moment. But that was the traditional, and my father even told me that. So I get some of this from my father. So maybe my father's wrong, but I highly doubt it. Was that they stayed away and they shied away from each other for that particular reason. And the same thing was the reason why Martin Luther King shied away from Malcolm X, was because of the whole religion thing. And this wasn't even about religion. This was about black people. This was about, how do we get free? And sometimes you have to use any and all means necessary for freedom. And he wasn't open to that until people want to say later on that he was open and he was going to change. Listen, I don't go by what you was going to do. I can only go by what you did. That's just like when you talk about a football game. Oh, he was going to throw the ball. I think he was going to do this, but he did, but he did that. We're not going to talk about what he was going to do. Let's not hypothesize here. Let's talk about facts and what occurred and what did not occur. And those are the issues that I have with Martin Luther King. The movement, like I said, is, when black people, when you have no focus, you can't have anything. When you dilute your movements down and start allowing everybody else's agenda to come before your own, you're not going to get anywhere. I keep going back to it. When you're on an airplane, what do they tell you to do? If the plane's going down, if the mask drop down, you put your mask on first. And then once you're okay, then you help somebody else out. You don't help everybody else out when you're struggling. You have to get yourself right in a position to help others first. If you are poor, and you start trying to help out other poor people, every time you get $1 in your hand, you want to divide it up between you and your 3 other buddies so all of y'all get a quarter. Y'all will never be rich. You got to get to a situation where you good first, and then you can come help them back out. And Martin Luther King just let anything and everything go. And it's unfortunate. And I'm telling you, them love for white women during them civil rights movements, I'm telling you, pay attention to Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, that whole crowd. Nothing, they love them white women. And once again, like I said, I'm not in here to diminish the man's, the man gave his life for what he believed was right, so I can respect him for that. Because you ain't gonna find young people today, even myself probably. You have to look and say, am I willing to die for this cause? Am I willing to die for that? And that's the problem with our generations, or the generations that came after, the older people's generation. Those people were willing to fight and die for what they believed in. The young people today, if they can't get it in the next 5-10 minutes, they don't want to have a movement. Why do you think that you see so many black people? They're not starting businesses. They'd rather just get a job because it's easier. It's quicker money. They don't want to take the long and hard path. They don't want to do it. Why you hear so many people crying about the WNBA and them girls not getting paid? Them girls are getting paid just fine. It's going to take the NBA. It took the NBA 60 years to get them players $100 million contracts. The NBA has been around since the 1940s, probably even before then. It's going to take the WNBA. The WNBA just came along in 1998, 99? I don't know. It just started. And so it's going to take them a couple more years to get to where they need to be. But people just want everything instant. And I'm digressing. I'm getting away from Martin Luther King. But like I said, Martin Luther King, I respect his, he was strong in his conviction. I respect the fact that he was an actionable person. And what I mean by that is he actually mobilized people and actually went through with things. You have so many people talking about what they're going to do, what they should do. Hell, look at me. I've been saying I've been going to do this Martin Luther King video for 4 years and just getting around to doing it. At least Martin Luther King started something, and he did something, and he gave his life for what he believed in and suffered a bad, that's a bad way to go out. I mean, to be honest with you. So And I can't see a lot of us willing to give our lives for any cause. So I do respect him for that. However, I'm gonna be honest with you, his movement set us back. The whole reliance on integrating with white people did not work out well for black people because all of the interaction was not, it wasn't bi-directional. I'm going to say that. That's what I want to say. The movement wasn't bi-directional. Once they integrated black people in society, and I did a whole video on integration, what did they do? They bust the black people out of the black schools into the white neighborhoods. Instead of fixing up the black schools and busting the white kids into your neighborhood. You got to shop in their neighborhood to go to their grocery stores, to go to their shopping malls, to go to and spend money in their stores. They're not coming into your neighborhood to spend a dime. So that was the problem. Like Malcolm X tried to say before, we need to get ourselves right. We need to work on ourselves. And that's not even just talking about financial power or whatever. He's also talking about mentally. We need to get right. We need to learn how to love us, love the way we look, love ourselves, love and respect our community. And we need to learn how, and we need to on our own build our communities up. Because when you use your own two hands to build something, you have a better appreciation and respect for it. And Martin Luther King did not want to take that route. And that's what I'm very frustrated with Martin Luther King about. But I'm even more frustrated, not even just with Martin Luther King, to be honest with you, I'm more frustrated with the people of Martin Luther King's time. Because like I told y'all, if your enemy tells you, nah, don't follow this person, you want to follow this person, you should really be questioning why your enemy is pointing you in that particular direction. Matter of fact, just off of GP, you ought to be just going off to the other person just because. And that's all I wanted to say. If I'm leaving something out, I may make a part two. But once again, I just freestyle when I do this stuff. But this is just a political brown kid. If you have any comments, drop them in the comment section. Also hit the like and subscribe button. But this is the political brown kid. I'm out of here.